Hey guys, welcome back. Today I'll be showing you how I made this, a nice little silver pendant that I made here from scratch in the workshop just using the most simplest tools. I had some leftover silver from another project and I figured homemade silver jewelry might be a cool video idea. This pendant only took me a day to make and I just want to show you how simple it is to make stuff out of silver at home. And if you're a vampire hunter, making your own homemade bullets might be more cost effective. Is it werewolves or vampires? Anyway, let's jump in. You'll need a heat-proof work surface. I'm using a steel plate. We'll make the mold out of a material called Delft Clay. It's made for metal casting and it works really well. You'll also need a metal or a ceramic container for your mold. We'll also need some silver. These pure silver pellets are called silver grain and you can buy them online. I also have some scrap silver that I'm gonna be reusing. We'll melt it in a thing called a Crucible or a Scorifier. It's a kind of a ceramic bowl. They're fairly cheap and can be found wherever you would find Delft Clay. Borax powder is used to purify silver from oxides and to glaze the ceramic bowl so the molten silver wouldn't stick to it. It's really important. Our heat source is a simple blowtorch. I'm using MAPP gas because it burns hotter than butane propane mixes, but those work too. We'll also need an object we want to cast. Since I'm making this as a birthday present for my friend, I carved out the first letter of his name from wax on my livestream beforehand, which you can of course find on twitch.tv/Zibartas. Okay, so you'll want to start off with adding some Delft Clay into your vessel. Don't compress it too hard, but don't let it have big cavities either. I usually leave the top layer quite airy before I smush in the object I'm casting. This lets it sink in deep and I just compress the clay around afterwards. The shape I'm making is quite simple, so I'm making an open cast. A closed cast is one that is made up of two halves and lets you achieve complex 3D shapes. I also made a little border just in case I spill some silver. As I'm lifting the wax shape, I'm also using a stick to push down the sand trapped in the bee-holes. By compressing the clay around the shape, we've got real clean edges. Now it's time to play with fire. Add a pinch of borax and melt it. It will turn into this glassy liquid. The bowl will look like it's covered in butter, and that's when we add the silver, like into a frying pan. This part is sped up because it takes a lot of time to melt when it's big chunks like this. Different alloys of silver melt in different temperatures. That's why you should have different crucibles for each alloy, just to avoid contamination. Check out how borax is absorbing all the impurities from silver and turning black itself, while our metal is just getting shinier and shinier. Keep adding some during the process, especially if you see some stuff floating around in the metal. Wiggle the silver around, it will draw the impurities to the surface. Once you think it's ready, give it 30 seconds more. Trust me. On the way to the mold, keep swirling it and keep the temperature up with the torch. Don't hesitate, commit and pour everything in a single motion. You got this. Sadly, I immediately knew that I messed up. One of the bee-holes collapsed from the weight of the flowing silver and moved the clay up to the top of the mold. With a busted bee-hole, this cast was useless.
Disappointed!
I kept this part in because I just wanted to show that sometimes things happen and you shouldn't get discouraged. But that meant that I need to remake the mold, clean up edges, borax, melt, purify, wiggle, and pour again. Apart from missing bee-holes, the second try turned out perfect. The edges are still not super crisp like a 3D print or something, but we're just getting started. First, I mark off and drill the holes. Sadly, drilling meant wasting material because I couldn't recover all the silver shavings. I covered the steel jaws in tape just so they wouldn't leave marks on the soft silver. Then, using a round and a square file, I fixed the shape of the bee-holes. The top side of the cast had rounded edges, making it look like kind of a marshmallow, so I needed to make them square again. I used a Rotary sander with 400 Grit Sandpaper to make the face flat again. I didn't use high RPM just because I wanted more control over how much material I remove. After sanding down both sides, you can actually tell that it's silver. Now it was time to make the edges a bit more crisp. I started with the flat side. I used the round file again for the curves and then the flat one for the surfaces. Files are pretty aggressive cutting tools. They remove a lot of material and leave deep grooves in the metal, so I needed to fix that with some sanding. You could totally do this part with hand sanding, but I decided to use a rotary tool just because I had one nearby. Don't forget the B-crack. Before polishing, it's important to remove the biggest scratches. For this step I used the same rotary sander, but this time with 800, then 1200 and then 2500 Grit Sandpaper. Then I worked on the edges. Tools don't really fit in the B-crack, so you need to use your hands.
Stop it. Get some help.
Then a last finishing pass with 3000 Grit Sandpaper by hand. For polishing, I'm using a felt wheel with a red Rouge polishing compound, which is also known as jeweler's rouge. It's meant for softer metals like silver and gold. See how shiny it got after a few seconds. I take my time and gently polish all the sides and edges of the pendant. You don't want to apply too much force. Remember, it's the polishing compound doing the work, not the pressure. After 5 more minutes, we get this. It's still a bit dirty because there's some polishing compound on it, but after a wipe down with a microfiber cloth, you can definitely see that the luster is there. There are some imperfections, but sadly I can't do much about it. The red Rouge was the finest grit compound I had, and honestly, if you're not using super bright studio lights, it's kinda hard to tell. All in all, I think it came out really nice, and I think it was a cool one-day project, and even though, like with the failure and everything on the first attempt, I had fun. I realize that the cost of materials and tools might not be for everyone, but I think it's a cool skill to have and make precious things for yourself or people in your life. So there you have it. With this simple technique you can make all kinds of things, not only pendants. You can make rings, figures, all kinds of stuff, and it yields pretty nice results. Granted, this design was fairly simple, so let me know in the comments down below if you would like to learn some more advanced tricks and designs. Anyways, thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.